Hey guys, back to share another benefit of open air preaching. And this is benefit number 4 that I thought of. And it was a Facebook memory that appeared on my Facebook this morning that really made me think of this one. And the 4th benefit I want to talk about is the fact that open air preaching encourages other Christians many times that you meet out there, that you meet while you're preaching. My wife came up with a phrase over the years, as far as the ministry of open air preaching and, public evangelism. She would tell people that we are planting seeds and lighting fires. And that's what she meant by that I can think of so many stories over the years where other Christians have came by and been encouraged. And so I just wanted to share, there's so many examples that I could share as I started thinking about this. For example, the memory that came up on my Facebook, it was at the bus station. I think it was 2018. And it was just a picture of this young man. I took a picture of him just to have it as a memory, that he had been really encouraged by the preaching and had asked if he could take a bunch of tracts with him. So I gave him a stack of tracts, and he was just excited to be able to go on in his own Christian life and hand out tracts. And those kind of things have happened so many times over the years. I remember one night when I was preaching by the clubs several years ago, and I was walking back to my car real late at night. I would go down there real late at night, and I was walking back to my car, and I hear somebody running up behind me, and I look back, and it was an Oklahoma City police officer, and so it kind of startled me, and thought maybe I was in trouble for something, and anyway, he was stopping me, and because he just wanted to tell me how much it encouraged him. He was a fellow believer, and we just had a great conversation for probably 30 minutes. He, at that time, this was probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And at that time, he said he had seen me down there for a few years. And so, he had wanted to come up and talk, but just never did. And because at the place where I was preaching by the clubs, it had a really strong police presence out there. The police would just line up out in the streets, because it was in front of a lot of clubs, and so the security was really good with the Oklahoma City police. But yeah, he came up as a fellow believer, and he said, "That is so encouraging to see you." I remember him saying, "That is like apostolic. That's like reading the book of Acts, watching you preach out there." And so we had a good conversation that night, and we developed a friendship. Matter of fact, after that, he even arrested a guy that became kind of physical with me one night, and the guy arrested him because he had told me that night. He said, "I've got your back down here," and he did. And I haven't seen him in many years, but we talked several times, and he just talked about how encouraging that was, and so those kind of things have happened many times over the years. So many times, there's so many stories I can't even think. But it just reminds me, though, guys, that you hear the naysayers, and they say, "Oh, yeah, there's no fruit to public preaching." And I just thinking of a topic like this just reminds me of how ridiculous and really how ignorant such a statement is. It comes from men, from individuals, from women, from pastors I hear who say those kind of things. It's just, I don't have any other word for it but just stupid. To say that there's no fruit. Here's another one. A guy heard me preaching, and you guys who have preached a lot on the streets, I'm sure you have a lot of the same kind of stories that you meet other Christians and they're encouraged. And so I remember one several years ago, a young man was listening to me preach down in Bricktown, and he came up and he said he wanted to learn to do this. And so had a very good conversation with him for just a few minutes about how I got started and these type of things. And then about a year later, it was my first time to go to the big Oklahoma City Pride event, Pride Parade, and got down there with some other guys, and And a guy who had got down there before us in our group, he said, "Man, there's already somebody down here preaching." And so in my mind, I was thinking it was probably there. Well, there's no telling who it is. That's what I was thinking. Well, I got down there and there's this guy standing on a little stool preaching, had a crowd gathered around him. And of course they were mocking him. But I got there and it was that same young man who came up to me about a year later. And sure enough, he'd even bought the amp that he was asking me what kind of amp I had. He had bought that and he was out there preaching the gospel. And so I stood there and listened to him, and he was very solid, and he saw me. And so we met after that, and he and I preached together for a year or two. And the last I'd heard that, and this was several years ago, the last I'd heard is he was now a missionary in a foreign country. And so don't listen to the naysayers, guys, that open air preaching, there's no fruit with it. No, hey, one of the benefits, one of the fruits of it is that it encourages other Christians. And so that's this point number 3, that when we're out there in the streets and we're being faithful, it encourages other believers and sparks them to further obedience. So anyway, guys, that's the benefit number 4 that I thought of. God bless you guys.